G'day guys, I'm Andrew Lauterstein, Triple Olympic Medalist from the Beijing Olympics in the 100 metres butterfly, where I came third and got 2 medals in the relays. You're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
Phelps with 10 meters left. 3 minutes too good. The crowd roaring. Freeman wins gold.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by the Gold Coast Marathon and Pogo Physio. I trust you've been having a great week, and I trust that you've been enjoying pursuing your own physical best. On today's episode, I share a conversation with you that I had with Andrew Lauterstein. Lauto is a Triple Olympic medalist who, just like last week's guest, Stephanie Rice, took 3 medals from the 2008 Beijing Summer Olympic Games. And just like Stephanie Rice on last week's episode, this is a great insight into an athlete who dealt with pressure of expectation and performance very well to claim his 3 medals. Andrew took silver in the 4x100 metre medley relay team at Beijing. He also took bronze in the Australian 4x100 metre freestyle medley team. But his signature swim of his career was the bronze medal that he took in the 100 metre butterfly final at the 2008 Beijing Games, where he came in behind Michael Phelps and Ian Crocker, the then world record holder. And on today's episode, Andrew shares around the highs, the lows, and the learnings from his remarkable career. There's a lot to Lauto. Post-swimming, Andrew is now the co-director of Engine Swim and also co-owner of New Wave Swim School in Melbourne, Victoria. And we do talk about Andrew's transition out of the swimming pool into his professional life. And of course, we talk about the early days of Andrew's swimming, becoming a national champion at just 16 years of age, and a great story where Andrew stood on the podium at the Nationals by himself with neither the second or third place getter there. Andrew shares around as a junior why he didn't set a goal to become an Olympian. He shares around the transition from one of his childhood heroes, Michael Phelps, to himself as the national butterflyer around the time of the 2007 World Swimming Championships held in Melbourne. Andrew outlines the Beijing Olympic experience, seeing the Chinese cube swimming pool for the first time, the magnificence of that, and also the incredibly large dining hall at the Olympic Games. Andrew details some great stories about coming up against the mighty Michael Phelps in the 100 metre butterfly semi-final. Michael went from receiving his Olympic medal in an event just prior to the 100 metre semi-final to jumping in the pool and setting a world record. Andrew also shares a great story around Michael swimming in the 100 metre fly and what it was like to feel his presence in the pool, and why Andrew went from being quite cool, calm and collected and excited on the blocks for the 100 metre butterfly final at Beijing with a 25,000 strong crowd to being petrified and shaking within a moment, and why that happened. There's a whole lot in this episode. There was quite a few listener questions that Andrew generously answered. Oh, and just before we jump into the pool with Andrew Lauterstein, stay tuned with this episode to hear how you can win one of 6 pairs of Engine Swim Navigator goggles. Andrew, in his role as co-owner of Engine Swim, has generously made these goggles available as prizes to 6 lucky listeners of today's show. Stay tuned to find out how you can be one of 6 winners. So let's jump in with Andrew Lauterstein on episode 111 of the Physical Performance Show. Andrew Lauterstein, it's an absolute pleasure. We've been working towards
getting together for this for some time, and in amongst your very full schedule, we've made it happen. So great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me, Brad.
One thing straight out of the gate, what's one thing that Andrew Lauterstein is learning at the moment?
At the moment, I'm learning to actually just enjoy doing some physical exercise without having to go to the extremes. I've just started a new training program, which is it's called Functional Bodybuilding by a guy over in America called Marcus Philly, and it's more got to do with just kind of more functional bodybuilding styled CrossFit training, whereas there's a lot of kind of balancing styled exercises, and then also it doesn't really have strict guidelines as to the weights that you're pushing towards. So a lot of it's going by feel, and it's just kind of, for me, a little bit different to what I've done pretty much my whole sporting career, which was always pushing myself to the extreme. So just being happy with doing a bit of movement and following a program. And
it's such, I guess, a change for you, Andrew, for years. There's nothing that I can see that you've done half-heartedly.
Yeah, my whole swimming career, I kind of prided myself on my work ethic. And then once I finished swimming, it was kind of like, what was the next challenge? And then that next challenge just happened to be CrossFit. And then, like I do with most things, I dived into that head first, and then realised that the more you do something, the better you get at it. So I started applying myself pretty heavily to that and spending a lot of time in the gym, and then started getting relatively good at CrossFit as well. So, and then further to that, kind of my two businesses that I'm operating as well, I've thrown myself in head first with those and taken a bit of a risk. And there's not a whole lot of spare time, but I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, you don't really complain about it. You just get it done.
Yeah, come on, awesome. So, mate, Triple Olympic Medalist. Beijing was obviously the pinnacle of your professional sporting career, taking away the bronze medal in the 100 fly, and also the silver in the 4x100 medley, and the bronze in the 4x100 meter freestyle relay. But mate, where did it all start? So, growing up, I believe it was Victoria. I think a brother and a sister. What did it look like growing up for you?
Pretty normal childhood as far as swimming was concerned. I was always kind of a bigger child. I was called a man child by a couple of my mates, and they were pretending that I had hairs on my chest at year 7, but I didn't think I was that big. But I was pretty talented at a range of sports. I played football for Victoria in grade 6 and 7. I played baseball for Victoria's in year 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then was also doing swimming as well. I kind of started my swimming journey just through the house sports system, so representing Gold House, and then went on to the district zone, states, and then the primary school nationals. I did all of that sequence through grades 4, 5 and 6, and then I happened to win the national primary school swimming champs in the 50 fly in grade 6, with kind of only doing one training session a week, and that was kind of when the light bulb clicked to myself that hey, let's start doing a little bit more swimming and see how far it can kind of go. I actually got a football scholarship to Brighton Grammar in Melbourne, so years 7, 8, 9 were pretty heavily focused on both swimming and football. Kind of started upping the amount of swimming sessions I was doing as soon as I got to Brighton to probably 5 or 6, and then that kind of gradually grew up into that 9, 10 sessions a week, kind of year 11, where I missed the Athens Olympic team by 0.1, and then from there kind of turned into a little bit more of a professional swimmer, where I kind of was running out of time to be doing my other sports, so they kind of fell away as my kind of training sessions in the pool increased, unfortunately.
So just to be clear, so right up until at 16 you missed the Athens Australian Olympic team by, as you say, 0.1 second. Up until that point you were trying to wrestle between your football interests and obviously your burgeoning talent in the pool. Yeah,
I love playing footy, love playing it with my mates, and it was something that I kind of did in all of my spare time when I wasn't in the pool. My next door neighbour is actually Tom Lynch, who plays for the Adelaide Crows. He's one of their half forwards there, and he's a couple of years younger than me. So every night that I wasn't at swimming training, I was kicking the footy with him, or I was at football training with the boys. And so, it was kind of, I made some significant improvements to my swimming kind of over the course of one swimming competition, where I went from a 1 minute backstroker to a 56 100-meter backstroker. And I went from kind of being happy to make a state championship open final to winning the state championships and beating Matt Welsh and Josh Watson, who were the two kind of big players in the backstroke scene in Australia. And then all of a sudden, all of my interests kind of shifted towards swimming after that one state championships, which was in January 2004 when I was 16. And then 3 months later, missed the Olympic trials by 0.1. And that was an improvement of kind of 5 seconds over 100 backstroke in 4 months.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what was it about swimming that appealed to you? Was it, you said earlier that, you like that the more you put in, the more you seem to get out. But at that point, leading into that, I guess you'd say coming of age where you stood atop the 100-meter backstroke as a national champion, beating, Matt Welsh and the like. What was it about it that kept you in the water for up to 11 plus, sessions a week?
Yeah, like you said, I think the fact that it was all up to me. I kind of was in control of my lane in the water, which I really liked. The fact that I could dive in, execute a great race, touch the wall, turn around and be given a time. And that time was kind of a reflection upon the work that I put into the lead up to that competition, and then also a reflection of how I executed my race plan, where I found kind of, as I got a little bit older in the team sports, as much as I loved playing with my mates, I preferred to be the person in control of kicking the goal and be in control of the result, rather than the guy giving off the handball and relying on a mate to kick that goal and to get the result that we wanted. And I think that the thing that drew me to swimming as well was the thing that you're given the time. The time dictated your result rather than so much the outcome. It wasn't just about winning and losing. It was about the time that I got. And that was something that I always chased, and they were the ways that I set my goals. They were always goal driven. I was never kind of the guy that said, I want to go to the Olympics as my goal. That was kind of a dream, but that wasn't a goal. My goals were always time specific and kind of always relating to myself. And even when it'd be very hard on myself if one of my goals was to win an Olympic gold medal, because I went to Beijing and kind of had to step up and race Michael Phelps.
What a great example of staying within your locus of control. This is not bad from a boy who I believe didn't even go to swimming lessons. I believe you just copied your brother and did what he did.
Yeah, it's funny. Now I own a swim school, and I never learned to swim myself.
and what was it like? Two questions. Who were the swimmers that you admired growing up? So you're up to 16 years of age. Swimming in Australia is huge. Who were the swimmers that you sort of aspired to be like at that stage?
It was definitely Michael Klim. So the swimming club that I actually swam for was called Michael Klim Swim Trojans. So the swim school that operated out of the pool that I trained was owned and operated by Michael. So Michael's dad, Wojtek, was a huge presence on pool deck kind of every day. And Michael was training in Canberra at the time, but whenever he was in Melbourne, he would come and swim with our squad. So he was probably the main guy. And then there was always kind of athletes that I would aspire to within swimming in Victoria. So the guys like Michael Phelps. And then for me, I always looked up to guys who were that 17, 18-year-old age bracket. And I was always just trying to beat them. So guys like Patrick Murphy was another guy that I would look up to and race, even though he was not necessarily in my event. I'd always just try and beat him and his time across any kind of race that we did.
And so when you took that backstroke national title, which I think's quite humorous given where your career went, after this. But what did these senior guys that you just toppled like Matt Welsh, etc., say to you, the 16-year-old boy?
Yeah, so that it was actually the Victorian State Championships in the start of January 2004, and I'd just been. It's quite a funny story. I'd just been down in Lawn for New Year with a couple of my friends, and I kind of must have had 3 or 4 days off, or like out of the water, and I'd just been swimming in the surf and came back and was at the state championships, and I can just remember being really tanned and pretty happy with myself with how everything went down as far as the girls went down in lawn, and had a little bit of a extra spring in my step as I approached the state championships. And going in, I had no expectation because I was obviously 16 and I was racing in open state championships. And in the heat, I went from a minute swimmer to a 58 swimmer. And in the semi-final, I went from a 58 to a 57 swimmer. And then I remember I was standing up in the final, and I was standing next to Matt Welsh. And for some reason, I can remember thinking, I reckon I could beat him in a fight. I'm the complete opposite of a fighter, but for some reason that was in my mind. And I then jumped in the water and swam 56 for the 100 backstroke, and for some reason I celebrated more than I've ever celebrated in my life, and I was up on the lane rope punching the air. I got the back page of the Herald Sun. There was a big picture of myself, and then to top it off, neither Josh Watson or Matt Welsh turned up to the medal presentation, and my home crowd gave me like a standing ovation. And even though the other 2 guys had another race to do, which was their reason to not be on the medal presentation, but they thought that I was being the older guys were snubbing kind of the young gun.
Wow. And so at that point, could you have imagined that fast forward, a few years, you'd be standing on an Olympic dais?
Not really. At the time, it just kind of happens. And then I kind of, upon reflection, and now that I'm kind of 6 years out of swimming, I understand how the whole process works, and that I don't think it was by accident. I think that anyone with a good work ethic and anyone who gets put in the right position with the right people guiding them can ultimately go to the Olympics and stand on the podium. And I think I'm a testament to that. There's kind of, if you were to look at me, there's nothing overwhelmingly like athletic about me. I had a good work ethic from a young age. I listened to my coaches. I took on all the feedback. I slept, I trained hard, and did all the things necessary to kind of put myself in that position. It's by no mistake that you get put into a specific program by the experts at Swimming Australia, and then you're taken along to all these different competitions, and then that big competition is the Olympics, and you step up and perform. So, it looks like it's a dream come true, but it's a lot of the people that you surround yourself with, and a lot of the kind of history of swimming in Australia that gets you into that position to perform.
I mean, that sounds, just so put the work in, get the result. But I mean, you won a 50 metre title, a national title in grade 6, I think you said.
Yeah.
So you were clearly gifted in amongst your peers, even from a young age. Yeah,
that's true. I put that down a little, the grade 6 stuff down probably to a little bit more of being big and strong. Over 50 metres butterfly, you can get away with being a bit sloppy. There are a lot of people that kind of wrote me off year 7, year 8 that I wouldn't actually get much faster because of the size of me and the way that I swam. So I think that, the talent was going to get me to kind of that national level at that young age. But then there's a lot of people who get to that level and don't take the next step. And I think that's when that kind of little bit extra then comes in. Talent can get you so far, but then it's that hard work and that commitment and trust and following the process that other people are putting into you that makes the difference and allows you to go from kind of national 11, 12-year-old swimmer to Olympic medalist.
And when you mentioned there, Andrew, the way you swam, what did people looked at the way you swam? What did you mean by that? Your technique, or
Yeah, more the technique. I was a bit of a basher. I had okay technique, but because I didn't have much skills that I didn't learn from, obviously I didn't do the learn to swim stuff, I kind of just dived in and just muscled my way to the other end. Obviously I also wasn't swimming as much training wise, so I didn't have a great feel for the water. It was more strength, and I just had that extra strength over those other young guys.
You're listening to Andrew Lauterstein, Lauto, Triple Olympic Medalist, share around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his incredible swimming career and beyond. Support for today's show comes from the Gold Coast Marathon. Like the Physical Performance Show, the Gold Coast Marathon encourages runners of all ages and abilities to push their boundaries and strive to complete a personal challenge. The Gold Coast Marathon is held annually on the first weekend in July and is a must-do event for any budding athlete, weekend warrior, or family looking for a challenge to complete together. Run for the good times at the Gold Coast Marathon. Visit goldcoastmarathon.com.au. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to cross their physio finish line. That's where we high-five you and tell you that you finished rehabilitation and celebrate you being back to your physical best. In addition to traditional session-to-session appointments, we offer some great industry-first models of care, all designed to help you save money and recover faster. Check out our very popular monthly fixed fee wellness booster packages starting from a very low $195 a month that includes physiotherapy, remedial massage therapy, active rehabilitation, and access to state-of-the-art equipment such as the Alta G anti-gravity treadmill. To find out more about Pogo Physio services or our initial 1-hour appointments, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. But for now, let's jump back in the pool with Triple Olympic medalist Andrew Lauterstein.
So, Lauto, going into, we're fast forwarding a few years. What happened between this Olympic cycle of just missing the Athens team to Beijing, where you stand on the dais behind, the greatest swimmer most decorated swimmer of all time, Michael Phelps, on the podium? What happened in that 4 years to go from backstroker to Olympic 100-metre fly medalist?
Yeah, quite a lot. So before that state championships where I took that the 4 seconds off, I was predominantly a freestyle and a butterflyer. But then it happened to be that backstroke kind of jumped ahead of those other 2 strokes as far as my standing on a national level. So for that year and the following 2 years, I concentrated on backstroke. So 2005, I made my first world championship team and went to Montreal, which was the same debut national team as Steph Rice and Bronte Barrett. Then 2006, I also represented Australia doing backstroke again, but kind of hadn't really improved. I went from 56 at that state championships to swimming a 54.8 and felt that if I was to possibly flip back over and try some freestyle and butterfly, at least for 2007, I then could make an informed decision on which stroke I wanted to kind of focus on leading into Beijing. So 2007, I flipped onto my front and started my butterfly and freestyle as more of the predominant stroke that I was focusing on during training. I then qualified in the World Championships in 2007 in the 100 fly, and I was lucky enough to get the call up in the medley relay to swim the butterfly leg, where we went on to win the World Championships in the medley. And based off that and the way that I actually felt and the improvements that I was getting in the butterfly and freestyle, I decided to stick with fly and free for the next year in leading into to Beijing Olympic trials. So it was more just a little bit of trial and error and a few successful results with the relay team that made me want to stick on my front.
And how did that first World Championship medal feel, getting that gold in the 4x100 metre medley, swimming the butterfly leg? Yeah,
it was pretty special. It was at the Rod Laver Arena, so where they play the tennis here in Melbourne. They kind of built a temporary pool, and the stands were right on top of us. We were lucky enough to have the Americans get disqualified in the heat. Otherwise they would have absolutely smashed us. I think they had the world record holder in 3 of the 4 legs, but luckily one of them jumped off the block a little early, so we had the all clear to go without the Americans, and to swim in that relay with Matt Welsh, Brenton Rickard and Eamon Sullivan, all guys who I had looked up to and aspired to swim in a relay race like that. And the funny thing was, in that relay, I actually replaced Michael Klim swimming the butterfly leg. So that was almost the handover between Michael Klim, me kind of learning to swim or doing my squad swimming in his club, to then him handing over that butterfly position at the World Championships to kind of really cement my position as the national butterflyer for the next couple of years.
And were there any words spoken as a rite of passage from Michael to yourself?
I'm sure if Michael was to reflect upon it now, because we're quite good mates, he probably wishes he said a little bit more, but no. To be honest, no.
Well, that's the spirit of competition.
Exactly.
So tell me, Lauto, in terms of your training base, you were doing most of the work at this point, or all the work, out of the Gold Coast with Glenn Baker. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So as soon as I finished school in 2005, I pretty much went from school in Byron Bay to living on the Gold Coast. And initially I moved in with Glenn Baker and we were training out of the Southport pool, which is now the Gold Coast Aquatic Centre. So I was there from 2005 until, the Olympics. And
I believe that I've read in researching this that Glenn and yourself came up with, I think you labelled it the no trying technique. What was that about?
Yeah, so we found in Beijing, and also probably at the Olympic trials, that I swim my best butterfly swimming around 85-90%. When I'm fresh. So when I'm in training, I work a little bit harder to get the speed. But when I'm fresh in training, if I kind of say, just don't try, just float, just don't try, just float, and just easy speed, I kind of get this really nice rhythm and sit really nice and high in the water. So that little bit of effort for me just felt like I was tightening up and I'd fatigue a little bit earlier. So mainly on the first 50, it was all about not trying and just floating through that first 50 with easy speed.
And I mean, that played out well then in Beijing. So you qualify for the Australian team, your first Olympic team, and you head off to Beijing to the amazing water cube. What was it like the first time you saw that incredible pool in China for the Olympics?
It was pretty overwhelming, to be honest. The whole Olympic experience is something that is hard to explain. The sheer size of everything. The food hall is always something that I revert back to. It's like having kind of 4 football pitches joined end on end, and around, it's just ringed with food. And you've got people, from all shapes and sizes walking around with different styles of food. You've got people, the Cubans eating the Mars bars. You've got the gymnasts just having tiny little salads. You've got basketballers, and you've got, us swimmers all sticking together. And it's just a melting pot of cultures and athletes, and it's quite amazing. But first time I saw the cube, I remember we turned up a late afternoon, and there was kind of media everywhere. The media hustle of the Chinese, the Americans, and the Australian were all out the front, and it's very hard to keep your cool at the Olympics. I think the swimming program goes for 7 days, and it's almost a war of attrition as to who can reserve their energy, and especially their nervous energy, the best. So it's all about kind of taking it in your stride, I guess, and trying not to be too overwhelmed with what's going on around you. And that was something that I kind of managed to do quite well. I kind of had this funny thing that I would do with myself, is just try and play it cool, Andrew. Try and play it cool, and not ever have too high a high or too low a low. And it was something that I said throughout the Olympics. Whenever someone said, "Oh, how you feeling?" I said, "Yeah, okay." Oh no, I'd always say, "Yeah, good." Like not great, not bad, not okay, just good. I'm just ready to go. And I think that is kind of the mindset that you have to take with those longer competitions. And it was always something that blew me away with racing Phelps, was his ability to back up race after race. And I think he must have adopted a similar mindset to kind of riding out the emotions and taking away the emotions, and just kind of everything is what it is.
And so, you go into the Olympic final. I think from research, you qualified third fastest, and yes, you're swimming against Michael Phelps. What's going through your head on the start blocks? Same thing, just playing it cool, just another swim?
I wish it was. Everything was cool until I got up onto the starting blocks. I had this same playlist playing music-wise for every race, so everything was fine behind the blocks and waving. And I'll just wave to my mum and dad on one side and just wave to the Aussies on the other. I was under control with my pre-race routine as to how many jumps I would do, how much water I'd splash on myself, and how many arm swings I would do. So I'd rehearsed all of that.
And how many would you do?
It was 3 on my right and then 3 on my left, and two double forwards, and then 3 claps, and then a couple of rubbing of my hands on the blocks. So I'd rehearsed that plenty of times in the flesh, and also mentally rehearsed. But then what I hadn't prepared for was kind of the crowd. Like when they blew the whistle and we went up onto the blocks, the crowd was still quite loud, which I was prepared for, but the ability for 25,000 people to go deathly silent within a second, I wasn't prepared for. And within that second, I went from being cool to shaking uncontrollably and just wanting the starting signal to start. So it was blow the whistle up on the blocks, the crowd goes silent, and I didn't stop shaking through the take your marks and go.
And were you could feel this, even in a split second, you could feel the tremor in your body?
Oh yeah, I was literally then shaking on the block. Yeah.
Wow. And up to that point, you've obviously had Michael Phelps doing his, incredible arm swing slaps. What was that like?
Yeah, actually, you know what? It could have been those. The crowd goes silent, and then Michael does the arm swings, and then you realise that that's what I used to watch on TV. That's Michael Phelps next to me. I'm in an Olympic final. Can you just hurry up and press the buzzer?
Oh, that's brilliant. So take us through the first 50 and the back end 50 and coming home, pipping off the world record holder for the 100 fly, Ian Crocker, to take the bronze.
So the race in itself for me was always going to be the easy part if I kept my cool. I'd rehearsed it so many times in training, especially the back end, that I kind of knew what I was going to do down to the kick, down to the stroke, when all of my breaths were going to be. So if you really wanted to, I haven't gone, it's now, 2018? It's now 10 years ago, but I could almost rehearse to you. If I had the race running, I could rehearse to you what I was feeling at every point of that race and how many kicks I was doing and when I was breathing. But I'd rehearsed this race so many times that it wasn't, as soon as I launched off the block, I was completely in control of everything that was happening. I was able to kind of remove everyone else outside of my vision and just focus on myself. The only kind of time that does change is when you're coming into the last 15 metres when you race Michael Phelps. Normally when you swim butterfly and you're in the lead, when you go for a breath, you look in front and you see clear water, which means, I'm doing quite well. There's no one in front of me splashing, and their waves, they're kind of, when you hit the water, their splash isn't going into my lane. I must be doing all right. I must be doing all right. I must be doing all right. And probably for the first, the first 75, 85 metres of the race, I had clear water. But then all of a sudden, you start seeing out the corner of your eye some splashing start landing in your lane, and it starts moving further and further out in front, and that's Michael Phelps's last 15 metres of 100 fly. It's like he crawls all over your back.
And I've heard you say you could feel the water on your back.
You literally can. You feel like you start sinking because you see the splashes in front of you, which are Michael Phelps' splashes. And I think that's something that kind of still haunts Ian Crocker to this day, because that happened to him on numerous occasions at Olympic trials, Olympic games, over and over and over again.
Oh, wow. And so you're up on the podium getting, the bronze medal, Australian record. Lauto, I think it was, 51.12?
Yep.
And obviously the American national anthem's playing. I don't know how many gold medals that was at that point for Michael. Do you know?
That one, I think, that was relatively early on. That would have been maybe number 5.
Okay, so number 5. And Ali Day, mutual friend of ours, has said you must ask Andrew about the story about Michael Phelps getting ready then to go out and swim his next event.
Yeah, so a couple of funny things happened. So on the dais, I was pretty emotional, and I don't know how you hold it together. I almost was crying listening to the American national anthem. If it had been the Australian national anthem, I would have been bawling my eyes out. But Michael Phelps, he plays it pretty cool. And then it was actually during the semi-final that I think this story from Ali Day is about Michael Phelps. In the semi-final, I was due to race with Michael Phelps as well. And I was going to be in lane 3 and he was going to be in lane 4. And what happens is you're kind of waiting in the marshalling room, standing there ready to go out for your semi-final. But generally you have the medal presentation of the event before being awarded. And then as soon as that medal presentation concludes, the first semi-final then marches out. But it happens to be that Michael Phelps, before his semi-final of the butterfly, is getting his medal presented to him for his 200 medley. So he's out there in his USA medal presentation tracksuit, gets his medal, gives his flowers to his mum, walks around the pool, does the lap of honour, does all the photos, lots of smiles, lots of high fives. Then he walks into the marshalling room, takes off a tracksuit top, puts on a different one, puts on his speakers, puts on his cap and goggles. The marshal says, "You good to go, Michael?" And he goes, "Yep." So then 10 seconds later, we walk out for the semi-final of the 100 fly. He steps up on the block, dives in, breaks the Olympic record, qualifies fastest for the Olympic final. I didn't sleep for 3 days after winning a bronze.
Oh, wow. And so do you lament or do you celebrate being born into the same era, same Olympic Games as someone like Michael?
I think it's cool. I can whenever someone introduces me and says, "Oh, Andrew won bronze in the 100 fly," and they go, "Oh, who are you again, Andrew?" And I said, "Oh, you know that race that Michael Phelps, it didn't in the 100 fly, it didn't look like he won, but he won." And they go, "Oh yeah, I know that race." I go, "Oh yeah, well I came third in that one." It's my claim to fame.
Oh, brilliant! Look, before we move off that, what do you think made him so special?
I think a number of things. I think that emotional control that he had was better than anyone. I think his ability to set far-reaching goals, which are beyond other people's thinking, was something that kind of was pioneering as well. His ability to say that he was going to win those 8 gold medals was really putting something out there, not only to himself and his coach, but to the world. And then he chased that one down. I didn't actually train with him, but from all reports, his work ethic was second to none. I know Grant Hackett's trained with him a number of times, and he was as good a freestyle trainer as Grant Hackett was. And then he also did the other 3 strokes as well, as good as anyone in the world. I think he had one of the best coaches of all time. I've heard Bob Bowman speak on a number of occasions, and his dedication to the art of coaching is second to none. So obviously his support team was really good as well. And I think what happens with a lot of top-end sports, I think once you are successful, you can often, through the additional money that you've got, you can keep yourself ahead of others who maybe don't have the ability to dedicate 100% of their time to eating the right food, getting the right massages, physios, and the recovery required, and you can kind of completely commit yourself to being the best you can be, which is a really special thing for a swimmer to have, which is, I think, is one of the hardest things about breaking into the national team at the moment, is that without funding, you're kind of having to fund yourself another way, which is an additional stress or a time spent somewhere else. So Michael Phelps' ability to completely 100% be a swimmer and nothing else was something that allowed him to recover and give that little bit extra at every training session. So I think a number of factors goes into it. But yeah, he was a very special guy.
Yeah, that's so fascinating about the resources to really have that 100% commitment. Andrew, we say this show's about the highs, the lows, and the learnings. And so you've gone from that remarkable high. Describe for me the darkest day in your athletic career.
I had a couple. A good one is Delhi. So years after the Olympic Games. I was at the Commonwealth Games in Delhi, and I'd never really won an international individual gold medal. So 2009, I spent travelling around Europe. I was in a high-performance training squad based out of Sydney. However, we spent the summer for 3 months based out of Italy in a little town called Busto Arsizio, which was an amazing experience. And I went around pretty much any event in Europe and won the 100 fly and felt like I was really one of the best swimmers in the world and could race anyone at any time, anywhere and win. So I really then targeted the Commonwealth Games as my next big thing in my ability and the race that I actually set as something that I wanted to win, which was something that, as I mentioned earlier on, I generally was doing more gold times. And was more focused on time and process rather than the outcome. But it was for the first time that my goals shifted towards winning. And so with this goal in mind, I overtrained in the lead up to Delhi and kind of wasn't well at all for the 4 months prior to the competition. However, so I digress and speed up a little bit, and it was so the first event for me was, so I qualified for the 50 and the 100 fly, and the first event for me was the 50 butterfly. After having 6 weeks off, just kind of resting and trying to get some energy back in my body, I still went to Delhi thinking that I was going to win and that I could win. So I swam the heat of the 50 fly. And then went home and rested, then came back and swam the semi-final of the 50 fly. Straight after the race, I was freezing cold, had the shakes and just didn't feel right. So I didn't do any cool down, didn't do any recovery. I jumped straight on a bus and headed back to the village. Then for the next 2 days, I was in my room vomiting and diarrheaing everywhere. So I had to pull out of the semi-final of the 50 fly and kind of had doctors visiting me throughout the next 2 days and just discussing whether or not I would go and do the 100 butterfly. In my mind, still I could go and win. So I woke up the morning of the 100 butterfly, hadn't been outside of my room for 2 days, went to the village dining hall, had the driest cereal you could find with water before heading off on the bus, which was a 45-minute trip filled with potholes. I was wearing sunglasses because my migraine was so bad, and I was just hugging my backpack at the back of the bus. But still in my mind, I was going to go there and win the 100 fly. So anyway, jump off the bus, and first thing I go and do is have a quick vomit before going and warming up. So get some junk out before I go and warm up. That was probably just that little bit of breakfast that I had. So then I start warming up and kind of lost a fair bit of time just mucking around because I had no energy, just kind of laying on my back trying to get some energy. Did 100 metres of freestyle and kind of thought that was enough of a warm-up. And then I called out to my coach, Stolly, and I said, Stolly, I'll just do, this is all I was going to do in my warm-up, 100 free and then do 135. And I said, Stolly, I'll just do a 35, just a good rhythm. I'll hit 50 stroke rate and then I'll jump out and go and do the heat. I didn't think it was going to be too much of a big deal. I did 8 of the worst, slowest dolphin kicks you could ever imagine. Did 3 butterfly strokes and then had to rest on the lane rope and then get rescued by the Indian lifeguards. They pulled me out of the pool and then kind of went home, had another 3 days in bed. And then the next time I was at the event was watching the men win the 4x100 medley relay. So in a team that I'd been involved with kind of the last 3-4 years, watched them win the Commonwealth Games and stand there and celebrate, which was great to do as well. During the last 2 years, that was where Jeff Hugel made his comeback. So Jeff Hugel started training with the same training program with me for the 2 years prior, and he started at 120 kilos. And to see his journey, where he lost probably over 30 kilos and got to win the 100 fly and then also the 4x1 medley, was awesome to see him achieve that. But it was kind of at the detriment of myself. As I said, that overtraining that I had done previously was kind of to try and keep up at the rapid pace that he was improving. I was expecting myself to improve at that rapid rate as well. And for me, that just meant doing more. And I learnt that more is not always better when your body starts to shut down from that overtraining. But yeah, so that was the lowest point in my career. That whole Commonwealth Games experience was pretty awful. But in hindsight, like now looking back at it, it was more of, I can't fault myself. It was just I had the wrong idea of improvement and what I had to do to get the best out of myself. But I just had to experience it to learn that.
And I think it's, I really do, even at the most elite level, like yourself, Olympic medalists, that it's hard to, appreciate. It always sticks in my mind. Nick Willis, multiple Kiwi 1500 metre runner on the track, Olympic medalist. He said on an earlier episode that everyone does the work at the pointy end, but it's the athlete that can be patient with the rest. Let the rest do the work. They're the ones that get ahead. He says, I get ahead when I rest. Powerful, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's having the ability to rest and fully recover allows you to go that little bit better the next time you turn up to give you 100%. One of the things I'm kind of working on now is getting at least 8 hours sleep, and the benefits that I've seen at work and at my training by just having that extra half hour of sleep a night has been huge. Just being patient, resting, listening to your body, with things that I just ignored. And then also what can happen is, what happened to me is I lost sight of what feeling good actually was. So my best wasn't actually my best anymore. What I thought was good was really a 7 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. So everything just kind of shifted, which was kind of really confusing for me to analyze where I was really at. So after that Commonwealth Games, I kind of had 3 months where I moved back to Melbourne and reassessed a few things and just slept as much as possible and trained a little bit just to kind of really figure out where that kind of benchmark is for like kind of physical health. And
then did you go around to try for the London team? You tried for the team?
Yep. So then after that Commonwealth Games experience, I trained in Sydney for another 4 months. In that time, I missed the World Championship team. So after having a poor Commonwealth Games and then in the next year missing the World Championships team, funding is pretty much cut down to zero. Having no funding and trying to be an elite athlete and living in Sydney in the eastern suburbs isn't a good combination. So the stresses of not having any money kind of was going to be too great. So I decided to move home to Melbourne. And move back in with mum and dad and train out of the Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre here in Victoria, and did that for 1 year and had what I think was a really good preparation. I did as much as I could as far as listening to my body and trying to find a better balance between rest and work. And kind of worked really well with a couple of new coaches, both in the pool and in my strength and conditioning, and also changed a couple of things with my diet and turned up at the event kind of what I thought was as fit and strong as I'd ever been ever. But unfortunately didn't have the results at that competition that I was looking for, and kind of off the back of the trials and not qualifying for the games, I kind of just never went back to swimming.
And so can you recall the last session in the pool?
It was 100 fly, was my last chance to qualify. I'd done a pretty awful 100 freestyle earlier in the week. I remember, I think I was in lane 1 or lane 2. But to be honest, normally, like a good swim, I can remember a fair bit from it. I actually can't remember anything from this swim. It feels like it just, like, trying to think about it now, there's nothing there. Almost like I've blocked it out.
Yeah.
But I remember just kind of walking around pool deck and just feeling a little bit empty. I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. I just felt like my time was up, and that I'd honestly just given it my best shot, and kind of walked away with my head held high. Like I didn't miss a training session that wasn't, for the right reasons. I ate really well. I slept well, and worked with my coaches openly and honestly, and just didn't get the result. And maybe the effects of that overtraining 2 years prior had ongoing effects for that top level performance on myself. I'm not sure what it is, because if you were to look at myself at the Commonwealth, that London 2012 Olympic trials, I was honestly like a horse that's just ready to go. If you had to see me in the mounting yard, I was fit and lean and jumping out of my skin. But just as soon as I jumped in the water, that extra spark just wasn't there coming down the home straight.
You're listening to Andrew Lauterstein, Triple Olympic Medalist, share around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his career. If you missed last week's episode featuring Triple Olympic gold medalist Stephanie Rice, then here's a little snippet.
I think it's bringing to light that who you are as a person is not dictated by external gratifications. So the accolades, the achievements, the awards, the money, they're all external things that you get from being a great athlete. But those things don't determine who you are as a person. It's more important to work on who you are as a person, because that's really what brings all those other things about.
To tune into the full episode and explore the archives of the Physical Performance Show, be sure to jump over to pogophysio.com.au and look for the show notes, or head over to your favourite podcast player and peruse the archives that way. Now let's jump back in the pool with Andrew Lauterstein, Triple Olympic Medalist, co-owner of Engine Swim and owner of New Wave Swim School.
So let's go from some highs, lows, and learnings into a performance round, and then we want to pop in. I was inundated with listener questions, Andrew, for this one. People wanting to know a few things. So, you ready to race through a performance round?
Yeah, let's do it.
Training session you most disliked?
10 400s on like short rest every Monday morning for 6 years.
Oh, hello Mondays. Training session you most loved?
650s max, and each 50 being on 5 minutes.
What was your favourite pre-race meal?
I'd always have Mum's chicken curry.
Bedtime, morning time when you were going through your professional career?
Bedtime.
Bedtime, yep. And what was it?
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. You did mention, I'm keeping you up from your 8 hours, so we'll excuse it.
Which one was my preference? Bedtime at 9:30 at the latest. Morning time 4:45. Actually, no, it was 4:32 when I was on the Gold Coast, and 5:14 when I was living in Sydney.
Brilliant. Was that 4:32 instigated by an alarm, or was that your body clock?
That was an alarm.
Yep. Who's the athlete, Andrew Lauterstein, apologies, most admires and why? Hard question.
Yeah, I love what Ian Thorpe has been able to achieve, both in the pool and now in his life after sport.
Yeah, wow. Toughest competitor, this might be a given, that you ever raced against, and why?
Well, internationally, it would be Michael Phelps, and then locally, I always loved racing against Chris Wright.
Yeah, brilliant. Both Glenn Baker stable athletes, eh?
Correct. Yeah.
Was there a mantra that you used to use when you were racing, and what was it?
The one that I always liked to use was from my grandma, and she would always say, have fun. And then the other one was that easy speed. So have fun was a philosophy around swimming, and then easy speed more so for my racing.
Where do your genes come from, Lauto? Your mum or dad?
Neither.
Nice answer. Nice answer. Your best recovery tip?
Sleep.
Great. 8 hours, right? Your worst injury through your career, what was it?
I had a shoulder surgery on my right shoulder, which was just a little bit of overuse, and that was just from baseball, water polo, and swimming. Apart from that, I was pretty lucky. I always had good physios.
Yeah, great. One word to describe your racing style.
I would say the way that I liked it to feel was effortless, but someone else from the outside, front loaded.
Front loaded. You got to explain that.
I would always go out pretty hard.
Okay, yeah, cool.
I'd like to lead through the first 50.
Yeah, great. How would you describe being in the zone?
Not having to think about what you're doing, it becoming automatic.
And when was the last time Andrew Lauterstein was in the zone?
CrossFit regionals last year. It was a workout where we had to do some dumbbell overhead squats, a single arm dumbbell overhead squats. And I remember just being able to find a point ahead of me and just put the dumbbell overhead and just rep out.
And what's the hardest session, last two questions, you've ever done in training? Could be CrossFit, could be swimming.
The hardest swimming session was from my days training in Melbourne. I always loved these sessions. It was the 8 100s max effort. And they're all on 5 minutes. So enough rest to get your heart rate lowered down and a little bit of recovery, but the lactate is just absolutely pumping through you. And it was done short course, so there was no real excuse to back off at any stage. And then CrossFit-wise, for me, anytime I have to front squat is a hard session.
Yeah, nice.
I suck at front squat.
And the funniest thing you've ever seen, racing or training, what would that be?
Post-training, the funniest thing I've done is fall in fully closed coaching, walking around the pool deck.
Well done, Lauto. You're out of the performance round. That's another session for the day for you.
Thanks.
Your relationship with pain. You strike me as a guy that doesn't run from the hard stuff, but, CrossFit training now, running Engines, co-owner of Engines Swim, New Wave Swim School. There's pain associated, different pains with all of these endeavours. But what's Andrew Lauterstein's relationship with pain like?
I like it. A certain level of it. I think I've enjoyed it more previously than what I do now. Now I feel like I'd prefer to have more control over everything that I do, whether it be in business and in my health and fitness. I think that it's just changed kind of since the CrossFit regionals last year in May, and after we didn't make the world's team, I kind of felt like I've turned 30 now. I've done a whole lot of swimming. I've now done CrossFit relatively competitively for 3 years. At some stage, I should have a rest, spend more time doing other things, and just have more of a balance, and not be so driven for my physical pursuits. It wasn't so much of me shirking away from the word pain, but just having, just a little bit more balance. So pain was something that I always kind of seeked previously, but now having more balance and just feeling in control in business and then in control also in my fitness. I think my goal is to be able to kind of do anything, whether it's going for a 10K run. I look to do the Coolangatta Gold as part of an engine team, and I'm going to do the board leg, so be able to do that, and then be able to do whether it's back squats, snatches, or any kind of mobility movement. Just feel like I've got a good grasp on movement in general.
Yeah, fantastic. Will that be 2018 that we'll see you in the Coolangatta Gold? Is that right?
It sure will. Not individually, just a part of a team.
Yeah,
So
part of the team.
October 6th, I think it is. We've entered a team, and I'll be paddling the board.
And who's in the team? Can you announce that, or is this top secret?
Yeah, we're just doing an engine team. So myself and Toby, so we're the two directors at Engine, and then our New South Wales and Queensland sales managers. We're all getting together. So we've all got a bit of a background. Myself, Toby and Mal are all Olympic swimmers. They went to the 96 Olympics together, and then Dan, he's involved with Mooloolaba Surf Club. So we're coming from all different avenues. But it should be a bit of fun.
Andrew Lauterstein, if you could boil everything, this is a very hard question, everything you've ever learnt through physical performance into one bit of advice for listeners out there looking to pursue and perform at their physical best, this one solitary piece of advice, what would it be?
It's a good question. I would say trust the people around you to guide you, to take you on the journey that you want, but you need to be honest and open with your communication about your goals and the way that your body feels.
Wow, that's powerful. Very good. I was inundated when I put this up that we were recording with questions from listeners, and we'd be going for another hour if I was to throw them all at you. So I'm just going to throw a couple at you, if that's okay. Christian Miranda has said here, Andrew, do you think with everything you've been exposed to over the last 10 years in regards to how you've developed in business, relationships and other challenges life has presented, you would be better equipped to perform as a professional athlete? How transferable are these attributes to everyday life?
It's a good question. Thanks, Christian. He's a good mate of mine. I think some of the things that I've learned would be transferable. I think my ability to manage relationships is a lot better than probably what it was when I was swimming. That's something that I've learned out of business. But I think the problem would lie for me is that I'm almost too educated, and I've got too many questions about things now in life after sport than what I had to be than what you should have to be a successful elite athlete, or at least for myself when I was growing up. When I was swimming, I was kind of very much trusting in the people that were guiding me in my journey to take me to where I wanted to go. And whether it was the nutrition, the training programs, they told me what to do and I just did it. Whereas now I'm kind of experimenting a little bit too much, I think, to be successful at one specific thing. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question. There's definitely some things in my strength training that I think would flow over nicely, but yeah, there's a fine balance in swimming between being too strong and having the feel for the water. I think the people that I had around me did a great job, and I wouldn't have changed a thing.
Do you know what's so powerful about what you just shared, Andrew, I recently spent some time researching around an expert edition with a gentleman called Matt Fitzgerald, who authored a book, you may have heard of it, How Bad Do You Want It? And it's about the psychology of peak performance. And one of the findings that highlighted peak performance is faith in training is as important as the training itself. So what you just shared is pretty much that maxim to a T.
Yeah, I think as soon as you start doubting, that's when you should change and trust that next process. I think even just with my nutrition since finishing swimming, I've mucked around with paleo. I've done a little bit of vegetarian for a period of time. I've counted my macronutrients for a period of time, and they all follow different philosophies as far as the macro breakdown. Paleo is obviously relatively high protein, high fat, and I felt fine and did okay on that. When I was counting macronutrients, I was more high protein, high carbohydrates, but low fat, and I was functioning really well on that as well. So I think that it's just trusting that one thing and doing that one thing over and over again gets you results regardless. And I completely agree with that last podcast that you had on. That's
the faith in training.
Faith in the training and faith in the people around you is as good as it gets. As good as the work.
Yeah, mate. I know how much of an encourage you are for the youth, the up and comers, with what you do for Engine Swimwear, your mentoring, etc. I have to ask you this. This is from young Kelly Noon O'Flattery from the Limerick, over in Ireland, swimming club. And
Wow.
Kelly asks, she comments, honestly, cannot wait for this. Three exclamation marks. Is it possible to become an Olympian if you started competitive swimming at 15? I joined my local team 2 years ago from an injury that left me unable to play other sports. Swimming has become my life and my dream. I dream of representing my country. I was told at 12 I'd never make it by a coach, but I'd love some tips or even the brutal honest truth of my chances of getting there. I do swimming 11 times a week with 4 hours of gym. What else could help?
Wow. Good stuff. And good on you for getting in the water and giving it your best. I think something that's interesting that's come out of Swimming Australia, most like in the last week, which will be news to your ears, is that they're removing national age championships for the 13 and possibly the 14-year-old age groups to encourage swimmers being competitive at a later age. So being 15 and having the thirst for competition and having the fire in the belly to go to training and doing the 11 sessions that you've got, there's no reason why you can't be representing Ireland at an Olympic Games in the near future. As we've spoken about today, if you trust your coach and give it your best and make sure you're recovering and working on your technique at all times, there's no reason why you can't be competing at the highest level. So, keep sticking at it and have fun, and you're on the way.
There you go, young Kelly. That's awesome, Andrew. Mate, what's on the bucket list for Andrew Lauterstein? You've got a lot on the go. A little bit about your ventures. What's coming up for you?
Yeah, so I've obviously got my swim school, New Wave Swim School, which is ticking along nicely, which is a business I bought 2 years ago. So that's just business as usual here in Frankston in Melbourne. With Engine, we're developing a new racing suit, already looking towards the 2020 London Olympics for our pool racing suit, and then always developing new things with our surf lifesaving athletes and products in that space. So that's pretty exciting. Fitness-wise, I'm following this 12-week program, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is quite exciting. I'm 3 weeks in now and feeling really good on that. And I'm going to do a local CrossFit competition in July. So that's something that I'm training towards at the moment. And then after that competition, I'll shift my focus a little bit more to the chilly waters of Melbourne and start paddling a board in preparation for the Coolangatta Gold, where I'm doing that a part of a team. And then that's pretty much it. I've got a couple of trips to the US booked in for some conferences, and then also we're partnered with through Engine with the USLA Lifeguards Service. So we'll go to the USA National Lifesaving Championships in September. And apart from that, just chipping along as usual, just trying to keep myself busy every day and keep moving and just keep improving myself, both in the business sense, in my relationships with my family and friends, and then also in a physical space.
Brilliant. And listeners, you can jump over the show notes. We'll tag up everything that Andrew's mentioned there, the Instagram handles at engine_swim and at a Lauterstein. So check those out. Mm-hmm. Fun question to bring the plane in. 3 people at a dinner table. Who's at Andrew Lauterstein's, living or past?
Well, I think I'd always love to hang out with LeBron James, or currently and previously. He's such a great athlete, and he's a bit of a character as well. Sip on some bourbon with LeBron at a dinner party would be nice. I'd like to invite Joe Rogan. I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, so he can get the most out of the other 2 people at the table. So Joe Rogan, who's got an awesome podcast, and he's interviewed heaps of good guys, he'd be great to have there. Yeah. And thirdly, if I'm inviting Joe to do interviews and I've only got LeBron, I need someone really good. I was going to say I'd bring my girlfriend along, but that would be a waste of then would only be interviewing LeBron. My third person, let's just say Ali Day. Bring Ali Day along.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, he's a good engine athlete, and was he on your podcast, Brad?
Yeah, so you'll like this, Andrew. Ali was the first guest way back on episode 1, and then Ali jumped in and co-hosted episode 100. So he was 1 and 100. Dual appearance.
There you go. Well, let's get Ali Day along as well. So Ali, LeBron, and Joe Rogan.
What a table. I don't think you'd knock that one back. You mentioned interviewing good people. Anyone you think, Andrew, that we should feature on the Physical Performance Show that'd be interesting to hear from?
A couple of my mates that I swam with, I think everyone's got a really good story if everyone gets a bit of a platform to tell you about their journey, whether they've made it to the Olympic Games or not. I think what you're doing with this platform and giving people the opportunity to speak about what they do and what they're passionate about is awesome. So I think anyone that is kind of passionate about what they do in a different space is always interesting to speak to. I've got mates who own coffee shops on the Gold Coast who now own a couple of coffee shops and start roasting, and to hear how they do that and their process is always interesting for me. I've got, my girlfriend works for someone called Radek Sali, who was the CEO of Swiss Vitamins, and when they sold that company for $1.75 billion, he took a fair chunk of that and has set up an investment company which is doing some amazing things. And listening to him on a podcast previously, he passes on a different line of thinking as well, which is always interesting to hear. Michael Klim has got a really good story. Michael Klim would be a ripper to have on. He's a great guy, and he's also, he hasn't swum for 10, 15 years as well, and has done a lot in his life after swimming that is always good to hear about his life lessons and what he did differently in his upbringing as well. Everyone's got a unique story, and if everyone's given a platform to share, I'm sure with your brilliant questions, you'll get the best out of everyone.
Oh, look, thanks, Andrew. Finally, physical challenge of the week from Andrew Lauterstein to listeners. What's it going to be?
Well, I'm going to have to mention the sleep one. We've spoken about it a fair bit today, so I challenge everyone for the next week to have at least 8 hours sleep. And the other challenge will be, or if it's not possible, some of us have got young kids like yourself, Brad, so they're waking you up all night. But if you can't get that one in, something that I always try and do, I do lots of travelling, and unfortunately I'm being a bit desk bound and do a lot of sitting too. Something I like to do is do like a hanging from a pull-up bar. And there's a guy called Ido Patel who's big on hanging from the bar and accumulating 7 minutes over the day. So let's try and accumulate 7 minutes in a dead hang, so hanging completely loose from a pull-up bar for each day over the next week.
And that's from the hands?
Yeah, from the hands, yeah.
Okay, 7 minutes. That's a long time.
Not straight, so you can do it in blocks of 30 seconds. Okay. Yeah. So what I used to do in a warm-up, I used to do 30 seconds in like a hang and then a minute sitting in the bottom of a squat, and then do that and accumulate the 7 minutes back to back. But if you need to spread it out over the whole day, I just feel that it really loosens out your back and your hips really nicely.
Yeah, brilliant. So, listeners, if you take it on, do let Andrew know and myself. Tag us in on social and let us know how you go with that. Andrew Lauterstein, this is eroding your 8 hours of sleep. So I'm certainly grateful for your contribution. I know that listeners of the show will be as well. I think you're a great role model for up-and-coming swimmers and just people in general, mate. You've done so much in your years. Thank you for sharing so generously.
Good stuff. Thanks, Brad. Really had fun on the show.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you enjoyed today's episode featuring Andrew Lauterstein, Triple Olympic Medalist, co-owner of Engine Swim and owner of New Wave Swim School. If you did enjoy today's episode, then please be sure to let both myself and Andrew know. You will find Andrew over on Instagram at @Lauterstein, that's ALAUTERSTIEN, and let us know what it was that you enjoyed about today's episode. What was inspiring, or perhaps what was just entertaining. That would mean a lot to Andrew, and it would mean a lot to myself also. If today was your first time tuning in to the Physical Performance Show, then a mighty welcome. If it was indeed your 111th time tuning in, then thank you for your ongoing support. If you enjoyed today's show and you know anyone who would benefit from it or find this episode interesting, a budding up-and-coming swimmer, triathlete, or anyone that's out there looking to pursue their physical best, then please consider sharing the episode with them. It's simple. You simply hit share from your smartphone. Sharing helps this show reach more listeners who, just like you, are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. So thanks in advance, guys, for sharing this episode and others around. Don't forget, of course, to hit subscribe if you'd like to get each and every episode as they're released Thursday evenings direct into your earbuds. If you've been enjoying the show, then please consider leaving a review on iTunes. Reviews help the show get into more earbuds and very simply helps the audience to grow. Now, if you don't leave a review, don't worry, I still love you and appreciate your support. However, if you're considering leaving one, it's a cinch. Just jump over to iTunes from your smartphone, click away a rating of 1 to 5 stars, and if you're inclined, then feel free to leave a review. But if you don't, no sweat. A big thanks, however, to a listener this week who reviewed the show, and that is Matthew Tyapanow. Matthew rated the Physical Performance Show 5 stars and very simply commented, "Great show." Thanks, Matthew, for your feedback. It means a lot. Talking about feedback, the Physical Performance Show quiz is now open, and we're opening up the quiz through until episode 115 to hear from you around anything that we can improve on with the Physical Performance Show. Perhaps there's future guests that you have in mind, future topics of interest, including recommendations for the expert editions that we feature, or perhaps it's just the order of the show, the length of the show. What is it that you think that we can improve? I'd love to know. Jump over to pogophysio.com.au/podcast, and there you can take the quiz. And to say thanks, you can go into the draw to win a $100 movie voucher to the cinemas of your choice, drawn on episode 115. And a big thanks to those that have been leaving feedback for the show so far. Talking about big thanks, a big thanks to the team who make the Physical Performance Show possible each and every week. That's Susan Wilkin on all things administration from Adminaholics, Matthew Olding on all things graphic design, and of course Daryl Misson, Vanillo, our incredible audio engineer, who makes the show possible each and every week with his great skill. Of course, a massive thank you again to today's show's sponsor, the Gold Coast Marathon. Podcasts are free to download, however, they are far from free to produce, and the Gold Coast Marathon support is greatly appreciated. If you're considering running the Gold Coast Marathon or any of the events, the 5.7K, the 10K, half marathon, or the full marathon, then don't delay. It's an incredible weekend held on the first weekend in July. And for myself, it's been a regular on my run sheet for the last 10 years. It's a great weekend, an incredible scene, great atmosphere on a beautiful, beautiful flat and fast course. So head over to thegoldcoastmarathon.com.au. Don't forget to take your podsy, that's the screenshot of the episode that you're listening to, and share it around on social media. Simply tag myself in at Brad_beer, and you can go into the draw to be the Podsy winner of the week. And this week's Podsy winner of the week is Prue McAuliffe. Prue is a 400-metre track athlete, and you can find Prue over on Instagram at Prue, P-R-U, McAuliffe, M-C-A-U-L-I-F-F-E. And follow Prue's journey. Prue tagged up an episode that she was enjoying featuring Stephanie Rice's share-ins on her remarkable career. So thanks, Prue, for sharing your Podsy on social, and congratulations on being the Podsy winner of the week and winning a signed copy of my Amazon running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain Free. Now, just before we go, Andrew has been very generous with his role at Engine Swim in popping up the opportunity for listeners of today's episode to win one of 6 pairs of Engine Swim goggles called the Navigator. Now, to go into the draw of winning a pair of the Navigators, you simply need to take a screenshot of the episode that you're enjoying. Now, just before we go, Andrew has been very generous with his role at Engine Swim in providing 6 pairs of Engine Navigator swimming goggles. Now, just before we go, Lauto has been very generous in his role with Engine Swim in offering up 6 prizes by way of 6 pairs of Engine Swim Navigator goggles. These are awesome goggles. Engine Swim makes fantastic swimwear, which you often see featured on the best Ironman athletes around, such as our previous guests, Ali Day, Matt Bevilacqua, and the like. And you can win one of these 6 pairs of goggles by simply sharing the episode 111 show image on social media and tagging myself. And by tagging myself at Brad_beer and Engine Swim at Engine_swim into your social sharing and go into the draw from there. So massive thanks to Lauto and Engine Swim for the generosity in sharing 6 pairs of Navigator goggles. Don't miss it. Share that around and go into the draw to win those great prizes. Coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, I'll bring you a conversation I had with Dr. Christian Barton. This is a return to an expert edition in which Dr. Christian Barton, physiotherapist, researcher from Melbourne, shares around all things patellofemoral pain. What's patellofemoral pain? Simply, it's kneecap pain. It's one of the most common injuries amongst athletes, runners in particular, and you don't have to be a runner to suffer from kneecap pain. Myself, I've had a long journey with both sides of my knees suffering from patellofemoral pain, and Dr. Christian Barton is one of the world's leading authorities on this topic. So looking forward to bringing that one to you next week before we flick back with some fantastic further athlete interviews. So until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.